Hi there, my name is Lauren Hamburger and I'm the director of PJ Library in the UK. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Yasod for inviting me to give this short Devar Torah this week. So this week's Parshat is Devarim, and it is the first in the final book of the 5 chapters of the 5 books of the Torah. And really, if we just take that first word, seeing as it's so significant as it's starting this book, Devarim, coming from the root ledaber, to speak, and Devarim really is about Moshe retelling the laws to the Bnei Israel, and it's this compendium of laws that have significance, especially as they are a nation that are coming from the wilderness with the plan of moving into the land of Israel. And it's such a familiar idea, I'm sure, with so many of you, this as leaders and as people working in the community, of retelling important information to people, and in a way that it will allow people to remember the information or connect with the message in some way. And it's a very well-known pedagogical idea that teachers use, and year in, year out, whether in I know teaching methods differ from country to country. Some countries with maths, for example, they'll teach a whole idea in year 2, like fractions or whatever, and then year 3 they'll go on to something else, whereas in England they will teach an idea, a little bit of an idea in year 1, and then they'll return to it in year 2, and then build on that a bit more, and then build on a bit more. Not that I'm an expert in maths education around the world, but when you're looking at that, that's also a very familiar idea in Judaism. We read the same story every single week in shul, and then at the end of the calendar at Simchat Torah, we have a big party, and then we begin again. And there's the idea that we retell these stories so we remember them, but also so that we can identify new ideas from them and find new ways to find meaning in them. In PJ Library, it's quite a common thing that we do as well. Lots of stories that people are making up from fresh, but there's also some great classic stories, and I've got a couple of examples here. Everybody, I'm sure, will be familiar with 3 Little Pigs, but how well do you know not for all the hum and tushin in town? And that's taking the 3 Little Pigs and turning it into a Purim story that is actually very funny. And then there's Little Red Riding Hood, and we've made it, which there are hundreds, if not thousands, of variations around the world. And actually, the Israel Museum has an amazing collection of all of these. If ever you get to go to the Children's Illustration Library, it's fascinating. But you can see here Little Red Ruthie, a Hanukkah tale, and it turns out the big bad wolf in this version actually loves latkes. So there's ways of telling the same story but making it relevant to your audience. And I think that's a challenge that we'll all have, of depending on whether you've got to look at your audience's age, their ability, their knowledge, their Jewish knowledge, what generation they are, how they want to access information. And it reminded me, a couple of years ago, it was an interesting conversation I was part of for the Wingate Award, the Jewish Book Prize, and the award is how the announcements of the winners is held every year in London, and I attended one, and one year the judges were saying there were quite a lot of Holocaust entries, books about Holocaust. The theme of Holocaust is recurring, and should that still be a way? Should that still be a big theme for Jewish books 70 years after? And there was a very interesting conversation, and I actually, one of them was very dismissive of it, and I put my hand up and I said, funnily enough, that week I had been reading with my daughter a book from school, and it was a book about the Olympics, and one of them it talked about the 1936 Olympics, and she read the word, Mummy, what's this word? Nazi? What's a Nazi? And obviously I had to say it's a Nazi, and it broke my heart a bit because she obviously had never encountered the word Nazi, no knowledge of this traumatic event that affected and still affects many people worldwide. So it was in a conversation that we had about this next generation. We are going to need to talk about stories about the Holocaust, and make it meaningful for children that will never meet a survivor, but in ways that will still mean that the Holocaust isn't just some event in faraway history that's nothing to do with them. And whether we do it digitally or through symbolism or through visits to parts of Europe or other creative ways that I'm sure teachers will come up with. But that idea of taking a story and retelling it. And I think that goes back to that original message of Moshe, when he's taking the children of Israel. How does he talk about a Jewish, these laws that are so important to building this people, but in a way that is going to resonate to them and be relevant? And for all of us, how can we have these conversations and convey our organisation's missions in a way that is impactful and creates connections with the people that we're speaking with? And I think, for all of us, we've this weekend we're going from Bamidbar to Devarim, and all of us in the past few weeks and months have definitely been in some sort of wilderness, fumbling our way through this pandemic and new ways of working and living and connecting with people. And as we go into this new chapter of Devarim, of really using words and to make that connection with people, whether it's socially distant or over the phone or Zoom or all these other amazing ways through technology we can connect. But it's taking our message and making it relevant and impactful to the people we're speaking to. So wishing you all Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.